Hi, it's Patrick, and I'm back to show you some humor magazines from the 70s and 80s. And you could say that the 70s and 80s was the high point for the old-fashioned humor magazine. Now, I have all of the major ones here with the exception of National Lampoon, that simply I couldn't show you a copy of that because it would probably make this video unacceptable for my channel. So I'm going to stick to the humor magazines that were targeted for everybody, starting with the most famous one, Mad Magazine. This is a 1975 issue, which was close to their peak of popularity when Mad had the best movie satires and parodies and the best wit about culture and politics of any of these magazines. So the back of it has an interesting bit of black humor about the drug epidemic, and in the front we just see Alfred E. Newman. He was the mascot of Mad, about ready to start skiing. And then, of course, there's a blind guy there who doesn't see everyone pulling out. So, some ads to get the old classic Mad that had the old logo on it. And every page of Mad was a joke. That's what I liked about it. Everything, even the credits, the usual gang of idiots was, every single thing was a joke. They took nothing seriously. Nothing was sacred to them. It didn't matter if you were liberal or conservative. They made fun of you either way, at least in the beginning. So, their letters department, basically, they would insult the people who wrote them letters, which was just kind of funny. That was how they were. They were very salty and sarcastic. Here's a good, typical Mad movie satire for Chinatown, and it's called China Clown, drawn by Mort Drucker, one of the greats of satire drawing. And you can clearly see that's supposed to be Jack Nicholson, but he was really good at these caricatures of celebrities. And Chinatown is a movie directed by Roman Polanski, like a film noir, made in the 70s. It was fairly popular. And I want to say that Roman Polanski did this before he fled the United States. But this was a career-defining movie for Jack Nicholson. The famous line, "She's my sister, and my father is my husband." So they're making fun of everything. Nothing was sacred to them. I can't even tell you how much fun it was as a kid, and then again as an adult, to read Mad and get all of those jokes. Some of them were for kids and some of them for the grown-ups, but it was suitable for the whole family. And then Don Martin was one of their funny cartoonists. He just did goofy, silly cartoons, and we would get little, you had, for a low attention span in the 70s and 80s, this was perfect because you had some kind of article you could flip to. You could just open this up and just start laughing. Specialized magazines for office waiting rooms, and everything was a joke. Everything was like, making fun of the stereotypes of these careers. Sergio Aragonés was one of my favorite Mad artists, and he did these really funny little cartoons. He was with Mad forever. Dave Berg did these lifestyle cartoons called The Lighter Side of, and then it would always be a different topic. And they were cheesy but still kind of funny. I mean, it was really more about looking at his artwork. And the artwork itself was usually really funny. The jokes sometimes were just really cheesy, but the artwork was really funny. And the way they dressed and everything. And his interpretation of fashion was always something to sort of laugh at, because he interpreted the fashions in this very funny way, and especially in the 80s. Spy vs. Spy was just, incredibly popular, widely referenced, mad creation about this black spy and white spy who were always, trying to beat each other. And kind of a Cold War thing, too. You're really a pet owner. You're a cat owner when you force yourself to venture out during a howling blizzard because you discover you're out of cat food, and then she refuses to eat. That's anyone who has a cat can certainly relate to that. More Don Martin, and he was so popular it was just called Don Martin Department. His cartoons were just random and funny. Mad's Poll Taker of the Year. As you can see, the artwork varies, but I generally would read it cover to cover, and I felt like, believe it or not, I learned from Mad about culture and politics and geography and everything. I mean, because the writers were all intelligent, and I ended up learning from reading this magazine. And I also learned a sense of humor, I think. Which, it's kind of sad because, we have the internet now, but I kind of miss these humor magazines. There's really nothing that feels the same. The humor now is just not the same anymore. And I guess I don't need to go into that too much more. But like this article is funny just because the absurdity of it. The Flaxbender family annual financial report, and it's like a family, and it's done up like one of those cheesy financial reports of a company with the artwork and everything, and all the sections. And I'm an accountant, and I can tell you this is actually really funny because it's laid out like a lot of those things I've seen. The little articles, and then your financials here, the income statement and the balance sheets. It's actually it's pretty doggone close. Bob Clark, it's a good mad artist. They were all good. And then you got your television satire. You had your movie in the front and your TV one in the back. And this is a Kojak instead of Kojak, the Telly Savalas cop show where he played an inspector. And of course, this was popular when I was a kid. I don't even know if a lot of people watching this video even remember it, but Kojak was, a real popular show. He used to eat lollipops. That's about all I remember about it. As a kid, I didn't understand a lot of it. And finally, our last, Don Martin. And then the classic Mad Fold-In, which was, every issue had this in the back. It was some kind of picture and a paragraph, and it poses a question, and then it's answered, like, by folding it. So the question is, what is the one driving hazard that automakers are almost powerless to remove? And when you fold it, it's drunk drivers. So it's and they, as you can see, they tackled serious topics with a very, very funny sense of humor. So that was Mad, the king of the humor magazines by far. This was the standard. And And now you're going to see the copies. Now you're going to see the ones who imitated Mad, who tried to, and in a way they imitate him to a T, as you'll see. I mean, they didn't even try to do their own thing. So let's start looking. The next one to look at, obviously, if you know anything about this, it's Cracked. Cracked was the second most successful of the humor magazines, and they imitated Mad almost 99.9%. The only difference was their mascot, and their humor wasn't quite as good, and the artists weren't quite as good. But I guess you could say Cracked was a little safer and a little more innocent. It was a little more for kids. In this issue, we shoot down Capone. This is the 1975. See, they're the same year. Capone movie with Ben Gazzara. As you can see, the layout is almost the same. I mean, almost the exact same. And then they have their letters page. And you flip to Mad. It's the same. Lettuce from our readers. And eventually Mad named this the Letters and Tomatoes department. So they're both using the same pun. And then the movie satire. In the front. So, and they're doing Capone with Ben Gazzara. Which is a Roger Corman-esque gangster movie about Al Capone. The artwork wasn't bad, but the satires were not nearly as they're not as edgy as Mad was. If you read Cracked, now here they're doing Kojak, and they're doing other TV shows, Gunsmoke, General Hospital, Kung Fu, Walter Cronkite, The Cracked History of Medicine, and then we get to, you know, just Mad would have something just like the Mad History of some topic, and they would make it funny. So Cracked, it's always trying to steal Mad's concepts in every way, just shamelessly stealing it. Cracked, some tips for whipping inflation. This is something like you would find in Mad, except just not as funny, although the artwork isn't bad. Little known facts about the American Revolution. And Cracked looks at summer camp. Mad had the 2-page things like this a lot. Then this little bit of like letters was something that Mad did a lot, and Cracked was just copying it. There's their ad to subscribe. Disaster movies you may be seeing. In the 70s, disaster movies were really popular, and so this was something they were, you know, trying to cash in on. Like the Towering Inferno was real popular. Summer is, and it's just making fun of like things, you know, funny things about summer. And Cracked was, like I said, it was just so much more innocent than Mad. Instead, Policewoman, it's Police Lady, the Angie Dickinson show. The artwork in this is pretty good, and they nailed her. They really did a good job of capturing her face. Cracked interviews the Stunt King. The Nanny Dickering was like one of, they had little characters too that Mad didn't have. They had little cute characters like that made this almost like a kid's magazine. It was so kind of innocent. And Rush, Nights and Days, little cartoon strips they had. And Shut Ups was like their signature. That was one of the few original things they had. Since they couldn't get Spy versus Spy, they basically had Shut Ups, which were just terribly unfunny. And then there was a poster, if you wanted, that says, don't put off for tomorrow what you can postpone until the day later. So just a funny thing to hang in your room. And then great moments in journalism. Fred Bleyer's honored at testimonial dinner for writing first story ever exposing organized crime, and he's in a coffin. So, and it kind of fits along with the theme of Capone here. So the next one, and the next most popular, was called Crazy. And this one was another just absolute mad ripoff put out by, Marvel magazine, Marvel Comics. Marvel was trying to get in on the action. Humor magazines were really popular, and Marvel wanted a piece of that. And look, they're doing Chinatown too. And the thing about Crazy, and oddly enough, it was put out by Marvel, this magazine was actually raunchier than Mad in terms of what they would print. And Mad was pretty raunchy, but whereas Mad was edgy and dark, Crazy was just raunchier. Still not so raunchy that you couldn't buy it, but you'll see what I'm talking about. Funny ads. I mean, none of these had ads at that point. Putting ads in these magazines generally what killed them. In the beginning, they just didn't have ads. So, but one thing about Crazy is look at some of the artists. Robert Graysmith. You might recognize that name if you studied the Zodiac Killer. He was the guy who wrote the book on the Zodiac. He was a cartoonist at the paper in San Francisco when the Zodiac murders were happening. So they did get some good talent for Crazy. Of course, they got their letters page. And look, Kung Fu. I mean, these are all at the same time. Kung Fu. I mean, they're all copying each other. They're all just running the same parodies, all copying each other. And see, instead of Chinatown, and you have to say Mad nails the font, and they have a funnier title than Crazy. And the artwork in Mad is a little bit better, although you can still make out that that's Jack Nicholson. So, this is Crazy's version of Chinatown, the movie. And just not as good. It's just the same story, almost frame for frame, but just not as good. And now Crazy's Useless Machines. Here we go. It's slightly different, but still very similar to what you would find in Mad or Cracked. Here we get to some of their raunchier material. Crazy, like I said, even though this was put out by Marvel, they definitely were not quite as clean as Mad or Cracked. And the artwork was just not as good. Like, it wasn't as fun to look at or to flip through. History of Moosekind. I'm not even, you're not even exactly sure. I mean, I guess it's funny in an absurdist sense. Underground Almanac, from the world of hippies, weirdos, and freaks. Consumer Confidential. Ramblings of a Crazy Man. And then you get your little Sergio Aragonés inspired and wasn't there something almost identical to that in Cracked? Like, look, Consumer Confidential, a mad look at consumer society. Crazies, Medical Crazies, A Cracked History of Medicine. See, they almost run in the exact same stuff, which was just kind of crazy. No pun intended. Gleeful Guide to Astrology. And here's their little satire in the end. It's got a lot of different characters like the Marx Brothers and the Joker from Batman, the Three Stooges. Alfred E. Newman, Sylvester Smith. These are the mascots from Mad and Cracked. See, this is Crazy's mascot, this little guy with the hat on. And see, he's meeting the mascots from Mad and Cracked, which is just sort of interesting. And maybe even Sick, a magazine we're going to come up to next. And we get to Uncle Stan wants you to subscribe, and then on the back there's the American Express spoof. So that was crazy. The Marvel Comics version of Mad. Next we get to probably the second worst of all of these attempts. This is called Sick, and this magazine was so unoriginal that their mascot almost looked exactly like Alfred E. Newman. And on the back you have Sick membership cards, this spoof, and this once again is completely ripping off the format of Mad and Cracked. So this is 1973. I couldn't find a 1975 one, unfortunately. But you should get the general idea. These were fairly current with each other. The letters section, again, in the beginning, just about the same. We were talking about Nixon, who was president then. A guide to buying a used car. And there's some contest announcement. Then we have what the future holds for celebrities, and these are celebrities in 1973, like Bill Cosby, Johnny Cash, Jimmy Durante, Jackie Gleason, Barbra Streisand, Johnny Carson, Bob Hope, Goldie Hawn, and that's supposed to be Elizabeth Taylor, I think. Don't think that's Jackie O. So You Think You're Ugly, a Sick monologue, A new Army handbook, Ike review recruiting manual for the modern soldier. See, this is interesting, but it's showing the Army was declining even back then. So the idea that the Army is at some kind of all-time low because of whatever administration is Washington, that is not a new thing. So don't be so discouraged by things that are happening today that you think that things are awful, because things are always like this. If history teaches you anything, just remember everything that's happening today has already happened. We just find out about it faster. It's body aids to help where nature failed. It's kind of funny. I mean, it's not mad funny, but it's funny, kind of, sort of. George Carlin at the Palace. I mean, comedian of the month. George Carlin was fairly young then. I had to get some coffee. There are no gimmicks about George Carlin. He dresses in dungarees and a blue t-shirt. His props are 2 wooden stools and a bottle of club soda, but he makes things happen. His uncanny attention to detail is tremendous. On cracking your knuckles, he has observed the lowest pitched is the base of the thumb, and on the selling of novelty excrement, you can always tell Doberman pinscher dog crap. George Carlin he was a national treasure. And they're making fun of games. Movie Monster Songbook. I mean, this is just kind of cheesy. Famous pinup exposed for the first time. This picture looks familiar. This was the famous pinup of Burt Reynolds, and they put Woody Allen's face over it, which is funny. Kind of. Sort of. Sick world. It just like a little news feed. Yesterday ashamed, today proud. This is very much like something you'd find in Mad. Doodles and what they mean. It's kind of funny, kind of clever. 6 stock tips. Divorce, the magazine for changing partners. And they're just using like pictures from like Miriam Hopkins from Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, and Theda Bara from Cleopatra, and what people do while making other people wait. The president, Nixon. Romeo and Juliet for today's young lovers. See, they were definitely talking about the culture at the time, which was kind of coming off the hippie era. If public agencies advertised. And The Godfather, a movie review you can't refuse. So they're going to review The Godfather, but they do it with photographs and writing instead of art drawing and word balloons, which means they probably couldn't find a good artist. And once again, like Mad, showing car accident humor. So that was sick. That was definitely the least of all of the rip-offs of Mad. And finally, we're going to get to one that's just sort of in its own little category. This is Bananas, and it was certainly a rip-off of Mad and Cracked, but it was put out by Scholastic Press. So it was an innocent magazine, humor magazine, intended for younger teenagers, but nonetheless, it still occasionally had some edgy humor. So, and here we get Star Wars 3 before they knew the title, Return of the Jedi. And on the back, you got your cartoons. But Bananas was, And it was popular artists and writers of this issue, and they're showing pictures, obviously, that aren't them. Pac-Man. Here's your contents. And like a TV guide. And then the Star Wars joke book. See, Bananas was much sweeter and more innocent. It put out joke books for kids and stuff. It was a humor magazine, but not nearly as edgy. But see, it's a bad day, but it's even worse when. And this is where you get into some sort of Mad Magazine-esque material. Behind the scenes of Superman 3. Scenes we'll never see in Star Wars 3. Sam Biviano, the artist, drew for Mad too. So I think he was moonlighting, working for Bananas, and I don't think that Mad looked at them as a real competitor because it was so kid friendly. Darth Vader's diary. Hey, lighten up. And there's a couple posters in here. Don't You Wish? And their little, instead of Sagebrush, they have Pig Hollow. Their little cartoon strip. Weirdos from Outer Space. You might notice there's a lot more color. Scholastic Press had a little more money. But Bananas didn't last all that long. See, they're making fun of Pac-Man. Summer Camp Guide. Editorials. Little funny factoids. Conan the Barbarian. And they got some postcards you can cut out. A magic trick. See, it was kind of all over the place. And then there's your letters department. So that's one issue Bananas. And I have one more just for good measure. This is the one for Star Trek the Motion Picture. And on the back it's the same sort of cartoon. So you got your letters here. And they're talking about Saturday Night Live, Gilda Radner, Bill Murray, a Q&A with Howard Hessman, Steve Martin. Here's your table of contents. Isn't it time the Incredible Hulk went to Miami Beach for a while so he won't look so green? I mean, see how silly it is? The Dukes of Hazzard had their own driver's license revoked. They invented a soda can that doesn't mangle your fingers. You struggle for a half hour to open it. And it's like that person. Kiss admitted they wear the makeup because they're afraid people will think their real faces are weird. And look, Alfred E. Newman. Lois Lane figured out Superman's identity. The Beast calling all beasts. 10 things you shouldn't have to put off doing. Granny Meatloaf's advice column. And then we get some comics. The Pig Hollow again. Banana or roller skating. This is like your Sergio Aragones. And here's a poster for Cheap Trick, the band. Here's an article about Star Trek finally gets off the ground. This is an interesting shot. I don't know if you saw Star Trek the motion picture, but this is actually the actors pretending to have the terrible, horrific transporter accident scene that gave me nightmares. You don't really see that picture a lot. The Enterprise. They're talking about the twist. It's a flashback article. A haunting experience. It's a history of TV. So it's a bit of a mixed bag. It's all true unsolved mysteries. I mean, there's some interesting stuff in here. It's like, I mean, it's the same company that made Highlights. So that's Bananas. And so we looked at Bananas, we looked at Sick, we looked at Crazy, Cracked, and Mad. So what was your favorite one? What was your favorite ripoff of Mad? Or is there any of these magazines that you'd like to look at more? So let me know, and I hope you enjoyed the video. And until next time, please subscribe to my channel if you like what I do, and click the bell icon and give me a thumbs up. Until next time, bye.